Hi, this is Chris Legaspi, and today we'll be doing the daily life drawing exercise using charcoal pencil on newsprint paper. And in part 2, we're going to be doing the 5 and 10 minute poses. And if you want to follow along, these reference images can be found in the New Masters Academy Daily Life Drawing Session number 17, and you can find that on their YouTube page. Okay, we're going to start with 2 5-minute poses. And this first 5 is a fairly interesting pose. The model is on 3, not on all 4s, but on 3 there. But the first thing to note is the beautiful bend. So that's the action of the pose right there. That twist, not the twist, excuse me, the bend in the back. That's the thrust, the main gesture I wanted to get. So again, once I get the thrust, here I also blocked in the graphic shape of the envelope, the outer shape. Begin to construct the torso. And now I'm relating the torso to the head. So here's another instance where I didn't start with the head. Breaking a bit of convention there. Now I want to make sure that the relationship of the arms, the head, and that negative space are working. This helps me gauge my proportion. So I use negative space a lot, 2D graphic shapes to gauge proportion. And so I'm about a minute in, and I got the main thrust, the main gesture, the graphic shape of the torso. Remember in the last video, the torso is probably the first thing that I want to get right in terms of drawing. Now I can move on to the limbs, that front leg, the gesture of the lower leg. Here this leg kind of pointing back in the space there. This back leg, so it's a very interesting pose and unique, interesting gesture. So this is the 2D block-in stage. It's pretty much complete. So now I can begin to either refine my 3D construction, or in this case, I'm jumping right in to the shading. So again, with experience, you'll be able to make faster judgments. So in this case, I'm able to sort of construct as I go using the 2D graphic shapes. And one of my favorite artists, Mark Westermo, recently became a mentor of mine. He draws a lot this way, and he's a student of the Riley method. Once the 2D graphic shape is there, the rhythms are there, the proportion are there, he just jumps right into the shadings. Very beautiful to watch. But it's a more of an advanced technique for sure. So if you're following along at home, don't feel like, oh my God, I have to get to shading in 2 minutes just like Chris did. No, you got to get the read at every stage. Remember, that's the goal. That's the goal, is to read. So I got the read early, so I was able to move on, but that only comes with practice and experience. So here what I'm doing is separating the light and shadow. So we're at the shading stage. First I want to separate that shadow, and that begins at the border. And that border is that core shadow edge at the side of the torso there. The light's coming from the upper right, casting a beautiful shadow on everything in the lower left. And notice the smaller shadow shapes on the shoulder and neck there. Just create some beautiful variety. Not a lot of detail, just small shape indication. Really, that's what it is, but it feels like detail. That's the beautiful thing. All right, so here I got the head, that cast shadow, that small shadow shape. Now I'm picking out that light shape in the forearm. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And that's kind of the fun part of shading, is picking out light shapes, blocking in dark shapes. So here I'm massing in the tone. So this is the first stage of shading, is to separate light and shadow. And you do this first by shape, and then second by tone. So I got to drop a tone so I know what's shadow. Here we go. Picking out that tiny little ear shape. I may not get to it. In fact, I know I won't get to it in 5 minutes, but just for fun. And that's the beautiful part about sharpening your pencil with the long point like that. The edge can become a flat edge and give you some beautiful coverage and create variety and technique, of course. So all this little stuff, kind of makes the drawing feel more finished than it is. And this is the beautiful part about life drawing, about quick sketch, about short pose, about this style of drawing, is it really prepares you in an efficient way to do longer finished drawings and paintings. This is really good painting training. So here I am, 4 minutes in. My time is almost up. My read is clear. My light and shadow pattern is clear. And now my form is starting to take place here. I'm softening that core shadow edge, adding a bit of halftone. So again, every stage the read is working, whether it's 2D construction, 3D construction, or in this case, light, shadow, edge control, rendering. Every stage the read is there. And if it's not, I just go back and refine. And there it is, use my eraser. Just go back and work. But yeah, I'm about out of time on this one. So that was a lot of fun to be able to get to the shading. Hope you enjoyed watching that. Definitely my favorite part, and definitely anybody who's learning like Riley style drawing or quick sketch drawing loves the shading part. Alright, so here's our second 5, and this one is kind of an interesting pose here. The model's going away from us. That's that beautiful thrust from the toe all the way to the head, so you see that there in the envelope that I made. Now I want to get the thrust in the torso, so the action in the torso, it's actually bending at the front, leaning back in a lot of ways. And now I'm going to try to extend it all the way down to the toe, if I can. Most likely I can, but I chose to break it there. So that was probably more of a construction-y choice. So that was like me showing my Huston influence. So one of the schools, one of my drawing mentors was Steve Huston. He has quite a different approach than like a Mark Westemo or a Riley style. More construction, more form, more corners. And that's what that knee was. I wanted to give a corner there. Alright, so here I'm putting some corners at the top, at the upper part of the torso, creating that beautiful corner where it goes from the upper shoulder down to the arm. Now I'm refining shapes. So remember, once you get the gesture, the main action especially, now you can come in and refine the shape. So that's what I'm doing here. Refining the shape. Now I'm adding some volume. So one of the challenges of this pose is that it's mostly in light. And this also occurs when you draw ambient light, photos with terrible lighting, which I always rant about. But anyway, one of the challenges of these poses is that you don't have light. See, I don't have light and shadow and core shadow shapes like I did in the other pose. So now I have to construct. So you see I'm spending way more time in the 3D construction, and that's what's happening right now. So the last pose, right, I was able to kind of jump straight into rendering. So here I don't have the light. I got to construct. I got to build those forms, the cylinder forms of the thigh and the cylinder form of the arm. And so now it feels pretty good. I would say the legs feel round in a sense, at least that front leg. Now I can begin to address the shadow, but you know, of course, I could construct more, but you know what, shadows is just fun. But please don't feel like you have to rush at any stage. In fact, you know, I would advise or encourage anyone who's learning this style of drawing to you know, maybe spend 5 minutes just on construction. Don't even worry about shading. In fact, that's a great exercise. Spend a whole life drawing session just getting your 2D right and your 3D constructions right, proportions solid, the gesture, of course. Don't worry about shading. There'll be plenty of time for shading, and especially in a pose like this where, again, not a lot of core shadow to work with. So here's that core shadow in the lower body. So you can see how I feel that construction paid off. Look at that lower leg. Once that core shadow is there, look how solid and volumetric it feels. Even at this beginning stage, it feels wonderful to me. Very volumetric, very three-dimensional. Getting that hip and that overlap, that's a powerful technique, is to note overlaps. Yeah, and if you study Steve Huston and all, he's a big one for overlaps, creating that depth. And that's my philosophy too. I want that figure to jump off the canvas, jump off the paper. So now I'm blocking in that little bit of shadow shape I have left. In this case, I want to really notice that more firm or harder edge, getting that contour of the shoulder blade there. Because what I'm going to do now is separate light and shadow. So I need I'm going to add the tone now. The little bit of tone I can add. Separate a little bit of shadow I can use there. Getting that shadow shape on the arm. And now the hair. The hair is fairly dark, so I'm going to group it with the shadow. And making sure that leg gets that tone and addressing the cast shadow leg. But that's pretty much all the time I have left for this one. So notice on this pose, less time on shading, much more time on 3D construction because I had to. So you definitely want to learn to adapt, and with experience you'll know when to use what approach and what to prioritize. In this case, prioritize was on construction, proportion, and getting good accurate figure before I do any shading and all. But this 5-minute here is pretty much complete. Okay, this last pose will be a 10-minute pose, so I'll be able to get into the rendering. But first, again, go through the steps. Blocking in the envelope here. In this case, I wanted to fit it on my canvas. Or my paper, excuse me, there. Once I get a rough envelope in, starting with the head here, and then I'm going to set up that beautiful long horizontal gesture that I see. And there it is, that big sweep in the torso. And I'm going to try to extend it to the lower legs, and there you go. Always try to extend the gesture. So the graphic read feels pretty good. Moving on to the arms here. I think proportionally this drawing feels pretty good. The length of it feels pretty good, but we'll see as I add more anatomy and stuff. The drawing tends to stiffen up, so you got to be careful. And one way to counter that is just to make the gesture crazy and dramatic in the beginning. So that's my goal in these first minutes. Here I'm indicating the front. So once I get that head, the arm working, and it feels like it's working, now it kind of gives me a guide, a point of reference as to the rest of the torso, how I'm going to handle it. That's kind of why I spent that little bit of time there. So moving on to the torso, getting the 2D construction done. Separating the hips there, getting some of that rhythm of the hips. Getting a little bit of that hip bone, shoulder joint there. The upper back. It's a very tricky section, so I definitely simplified as much as possible. Noting the abdomen there. So what I'm probably going to do is, once I get these legs filled in, so here I am noticing I'm starting with the contour because I want to get the width correct to go with the length. Making sure I note that foreshortening. The foreshortening, these legs are coming towards the camera. Here I'm noting the foot. The foot there. There's a little bit of room for error here, so I don't have to be super accurate with feet, but I definitely want to try to come as close to the reference as possible and make sure that it fits with the rest of the drawing, of course. Notice correcting that gesture there, simplifying it, really, that's all it was. Getting rid of that wobble, the cast shadow. So the cast shadow will help me sell the surface. It'll help me communicate surface, which is a very powerful thing to do. I do that quite a bit in my drawings. So I always want to make the figure feel like it's standing or sitting on something. And addressing the core shadow is one way to do that. And here, getting the small shapes in the hands. So what I'm probably going to do here is spend more time with the shading. Now there's not a lot of light, which is mostly light, not a lot of shadow, but that's okay. What I'll probably do, because I have 10 minutes, is I can use halftone. So there's a little bit of halftone there at that shoulder blade there. Very complex joint, so the shoulder blade is a great landmark, great anatomical thing. You definitely want to study up on that. Getting the small shapes in the elbow. So I kind of have an idea in my mind what I wanted to do, and that's part of experience and also observation, and just knowing that, okay, well, I only have 10 minutes, and what what do I want to say about this drawing? What's important to me? And in this case, I think to me it was about getting first noting that gesture and being able to get a good start on the rendering. That's what I'm doing here. So sometimes I get too dark. Even though it's a core shadow, you do want it to be dark. You don't want it to be super dark. And again, I'm using the flat end of the point there. So definitely want to, if you're using charcoal pencils like that, like this, you definitely want to sharpen it in a way so that you have a long lead. Long lead will give you the ability to do this, to create multiple edges. So that's part of good figure drawing, is knowing your materials. Of course, yes, when I'm in Mark's class, he's very diligent about making sure the students have their pencils sharp and the materials are tight. He's very disciplined about that. So here, noting the feet, and the feet feel good. You don't need too much attention there. You definitely want the attention at the upper body where the head is, of course. And in 10 minutes, I can't draw toes anyway, so it don't matter. So now I wanted to note that slight bend in the cast shadow there. There's a part where the hips or the knees pinch in. Getting these small little negative shapes there and hitting it with a darker hard edge. Remember, edge control is a part of the rendering. Big part of the rendering is the edge control. Now I'm noting the blocking in the shadow mass in the upper body. What I'll probably do is, because I have so much time, or 10 minutes, much more time than previously, I'm able to get these smaller shapes. Because I wanted to pick out that side of the head. I think it helps there. And these small shapes create contrast, and I definitely want you looking in this area. And you naturally will anyway, so it's better to give the audience some kind of reward for looking where you want them to look. Now dropping in the tone and also softening the core shadow. Notice how I'm kind of bringing my strokes up and over the core shadow. Real light strokes, so this kind of dexterity you'll definitely learn with experience, is definitely a big part of figure drawing, is getting the dexterity, being able to hold the pencil well and make good marks, clean marks. Dropping in the tone there. So now we have a light and shadow pattern. So you see that? We went from flat 2D and graphic to starting to look 3D. And here I'm beginning to address the half tone. So I probably got at least 5 minutes left, or maybe less. Now I can address half tone. And half tone's fun because it really starts to make the figure feel like there's light and shadow, feel three-dimensional. And I'm separating that rib cage there, and my marks are kind of going along with the form a little bit, against the edge but along the form. Here I'm dropping the half tone on the arms. Arms typically, especially the lower arms, have a half. They're a little bit darker than the rest of the arms because of the suntan, and there's also more blood at the surface. Here's the half tone on the that sacrospinalis, that back muscle there, addressing the glutes. There, that little bit of tone is the sacrum, the bony part of the sacrum. It's the last bone in your spinal cord. And making sure that core shadow works, and to do that also edge control. Notice the hard edges coming in, complementing that beautiful soft core shadow edge and the lost halftone edge. So that section is looking beautiful. And if you want to learn more about shading, I definitely encourage you to check out my shading course. I wrote an entire course called Shading Techniques, and the first version of Shading Techniques is in Photoshop, but the principles are exactly the same. You'll learn all of my shading principles in that course, so definitely check it out. Here's the calf, just trying to make the calf feel round. So I'm getting close to the end of time here. Maybe got a minute left or so. This is pretty much as far as I can get. So now I'm just going to refine my work, refine the overlaps, and hit the dark accents. So once you get your light and shadow separated, half tones in there, some of the edge refinement, the next step is to indicate your dark is dark and your light is light, your areas of contrast. That's what I'm doing here. So I'm going to punch in the core shadow a little bit and soften it a little bit. Got to make that glute feel very round, so I've still got some work to do, but at the beginning of rendering, it feels good. So I'll probably keep going back to that with the time I have left. But I think I'm close to the end of time here, and that wraps it up for this quick 10-minute figure drawing here. Okay, that's the end of this daily life drawing exercise. I want to thank you for watching. If you want to see more timed daily life drawing reference images, make sure to visit the New Masters Academy at newmastersacademy.org or over on their YouTube page. And if you like this video and if you want more figure drawing content and videos and tutorials, make sure you head on over to my website and sign up for my free newsletter. Newsletter subscribers will get access to exclusive content, so videos that I only release to subscribers, and there's a lot of great figure drawing content on the site as well. So all you have to do is go to www.freshdesigner.com and enter your email, and you'll be good to go. And if you want to see more of these daily life drawing exercises, leave a comment below. Let me know what materials you want to see, or what type of models, or what type of lighting you want to see. And I had a lot of fun doing this, so let me know what type of life drawing you want to see next. So until next time, get out there, keep drawing, and build up that mileage. Bye for now.